Today, we discuss the what ifs of UFC 300. In this edition, we talk about the chaos factor, which is always present in mixed martial arts. Dive in with me on the what ifs. What if Cody Garbrandt wins the fight? What if Kayla Harrison loses? And what type of shakeup will happen at lightweight if Max Bless Holloway beats Justin Gaethje? All of this and more on today's episode of Matter of Fact MMA. What's up? What's happening? Let's go. What's up, guys? We right back at it, right back with it. Today we're going to be talking about the what ifs, the chaos that could happen at UFC 300 if certain outcomes happen. That's a lot of happens in that sentence. So, let's start out with what I just thought to be one of the funniest ones as I was looking down the card. Deiveson Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt. What if Cody Garbrandt goes out there and waxes Deiveson Figueiredo? Right? Like, what happens at that point? Because we know Cody Garbrandt is going to go out there. He's going to hype it all up. He's going to, talk like he's back to his championship form. Which, I don't know. If he beats Deiveson Figueiredo, maybe he is. But, if he wins that fight, where do they pivot with Cody Garbrandt? Because, he's had a war of words going on with Sean O'Malley for a long time. But, that's almost malpractice if they throw him in there with Sean O'Malley, you know what I'm saying? So, where does Cody Garbrandt go if he goes out there and he starches Deiveson Figueiredo? You know what I'm saying? Like, he's not going to go down to flyweight as he was trying to fight Deiveson originally. He doesn't seem to have the size to go up to featherweight, so I assume he probably becomes the bantamweight gatekeeper and keeps fighting randos at bantamweight. So, I don't know. But, bro, if Cody Garbrandt goes out there and waxes Deiveson Figueiredo, I'm going to laugh for the rest of the card. Because that's definitely something that the UFC is not anticipating. But when you talk about things they're not anticipating, let's jump over to another fight. What about Holly Holmes versus Kayla Harrison? Now, I've seen all of the, I watched the UFC, it wasn't the press conference, but the media day. And, they were talking to Holly Holmes, they were talking to Kayla Harrison. They're talking to Holly Holmes, they're bringing up Ronda Rousey. She's talking about Ronda won't give her credit. She's essentially, it seemed like, Holly was a little bit like, man, y'all need to give me my props for what I did. With that being said, you look at Kayla's talking about, the queen is here. The queen is here in the UFC. The queen is here in the bantamweight division. And, once I successfully beat Holly Holmes, I'm looking to fight the winner of Juliana and Raquel Pennington, and then after that, I'm calling out Amanda Nunes. Okay, with all of that being said, we know that for Kayla Harrison to come over here, the UFC is paying her a hefty penny, because old girl was just winning $1 million a year over in the PFL, you know what I'm saying? So she's definitely getting paid, and generally the UFC, when they really put a ton of money, a ton of backing behind the fighter, they're looking to get that residual, you know what I'm saying? They looking for that big pay back, you know what I'm saying? So with that being said, what if Holly Holmes goes out there and starches Kayla Harrison? Like, what if Kayla Harrison is... maybe let's say first round is able to get Holly to the ground, hold her down the entire round. Well, if the second round, Kayla Harrison's a little bit slower than she was in the first round, possibly due to fatigue, because she's starving herself down to 135. Although, I'm not knocking her because I've seen pictures of her. She looks to be healthy. Like, she looks like she's going to hit that weight healthy. You know what I'm saying? At least 136 pounds. Nevertheless, what if Holly Holmes goes out there in the second round, manages to stuff a takedown, keep it standing, and ends up laying out Kayla Harrison? Bam, bam, boom, right in the middle of the octagon. What are we going to do then? You know what I'm saying? Like, if that happens, What are we gonna do then? Oh, the money they paid Kayla is like, okay, now you got a Pacheco a blemish on your record. Now you got a Holly Holmes blemish on your record. Not to say that any of those two are disparaging, because both of those fighters are extremely good. Holly Holmes is probably going to go on to be a Hall of Famer just because she beat Ronda for the belt. Nevertheless, though, what do you do at that point? Because when you go out there and you lose to Holly Holmes, it's hard when you're Kayla Harrison to come back and be like, I'm the queen of the bantamweight division. Because those of us who've been around, we look at Holly Holmes like, yeah, she probably will end up going in the Hall of Fame. But the casual fan doesn't see Holly Holmes as a threat at all. So, you know what I'm saying? Something to keep in mind. Something that would probably make Dana grow hair and then make him go bald again from hair loss if Kayla Harrison loses, because that's going to be stressful. Let's move on as I'm looking at the card. Just on the feel good side, because it could happen. My pick to win the Jim Miller fight is Jim effing Miller. But just looking at it from a feel-good side, not saying that Bobby Green doesn't have a chance to win. He definitely could. Shout out to Bobby Green, tremendous fan of him. But from the feel-good side, what if Jim Miller loses? Won't that hurt? Like, won't you be gutted? Like, won't your heart just break in half? You know what I'm talking about? If anything, I know Jim Miller has taken one or two losses, over the last few years, and it was sad. But you really want to see him go out there in UFC 300 and get the win. So I would dare to say that if Bobby Green is able to go out there and beat Jim Miller, Bobby Green will probably be the most hated fighter, not only of the night, but probably in the UFC for a little while. Because that's how much people have riding on Jim Miller going out there and getting a win. So, let's move on. Let me just find some other stakes on this card. Let's talk about Aljamain Sterling. What if he goes out there and he gets waxed by Calvin Kattar? You know what I'm saying? So it's a failed attempt to move up at featherweight. But what else is really left for Aljo at bantamweight? There's plenty of people for him to fight, but the UFC is not a fan of Aljamain Sterling, especially not at bantamweight. You know what I'm saying? So Aljo may be able to go back down and try to get some sort of a rematch with Sean O'Malley. But Sean O'Malley's got to deal with Corey Sandhagen, and he's got to deal with Merab. And if they try to make a super fight with, somebody else in the meantime. So, if Aljo goes out there and loses to Kattar, what is Aljo going to do? What does that do for his legacy? Calvin Kattar's an outstanding fighter, a really good fighter, but I'd say Calvin Kattar's he's not washed, but he's getting a little bit closer toward the latter days of his career, if you will. So with that being said, if Aljo goes out there and takes a loss, what's he going to do? How you going to bounce back from that? I don't know. Let's move on. Let's see. Possibly the biggest, craziest chaos factor. What if Cody Brundage goes out there and lays out Bo Nickel? Everyone is picking Bo Nickel. The odds for betting are outstanding in Bo Nickel's favor. Everything is there for him on a platter. They put him on the main card. A lot of people feel like he shouldn't be on the main card, but he is. What if Cody Brundage is like, man, y'all must have forgot, or y'all never knew. Cody Brundage in the house, and he goes out there and lays out Bo Nickel. Bing, bam, boom, right in the middle of the octagon. The crowd goes mild because they don't understand how to react to this. Then where does Bo Nickel go from there? It's one thing if Bo Nickel loses to a credible fighter, and I'm not knocking Cody Brundage, but credible in the sense if Bo Nickel loses to, Cannonier. Maybe if he loses to whoever in that division, you know what I'm saying? Not the top tier of middleweight, but kind of in the middle. Your Marvin Vittori's, people like that. That's one thing. But if he goes out there and loses to Cody Brundage, it's like, bro, what are we doing here? The Bo Nickel experiment has just ended. Outside of that, man, Charles Oliveira, Arman Sarukian, that could go, either way. I don't think there's a ton of chaos there. Considering Charles was already going to get a title shot, and Sarukian is definitely in the line, so not a big deal. If Max Holloway goes out there and defeats Justin Gaethje, that would definitely be interested in the sense of where does that put him as far as a title shot at 155? Would the UFC be willing to pull the trigger and give Max a title shot? Because he hasn't lost at featherweight in a long time. He definitely has a beef brewing with Topuria. But if you go out there and you wax Justin Gaethje at 155, and he's looking pretty intense at this weight. You know what I'm saying? He's looking like he's had a few muscle milks, a few protein shakes. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you're not just gonna give that away, that lead way of beating Justin Gaethje, the BMF champion, away and go back down to 145. But we got Dustin and Islam possibly happening. You got to figure out what's going to happen between Charles Oliveira and Arman Sarukian, the winner of that. There's a lot on the table, you know what I'm saying? Where does Max go from there? You know what I mean? And also, there's a snowed up Irishman waiting in the distance that the UFC would definitely love to throw in a major fight, whether it's for a belt or whether it's for just do a super fight against Max. I don't know. It's something to keep in mind. I don't know if Conor will ever even fight at 155 again, but just the fact, what are they going to do with Max? It's all good problems. Max beating Justin Gaethje, it's a good problem to have Max Holloway at 155 with options. But I'm just saying, what's going to happen? What if Jean Xiaonan beats Zhang Wei Li? In my opinion, if that happens, they're holding that rematch off and they're taking it to China and they're going to sell out everything. And that'll be a tremendous, huge pay-per-view, huge fight in China. But Jan has to go out there and win. But that's the thing. If she wins, bro, how does that shake up the division? I'm not sure who else is waiting in the wings at strawweight to get a title shot. So the UFC might be welcoming this issue, so to speak. But with that being said, bro, if Jan goes out there and wins, shocking. Outside of that, in the main event, that could kind of go either way. If Alex Pereira wins, good deal. If Jamal Hill wins, good deal. There's definitely other fights that they can make and rematches that they can create. But that's just what I wanted to come in and drop in on you all today, because we all think we have the winners and losers figured out on UFC 300 because we've been looking at this card for so long. But the reality of it is what if some of the people that are underdogs, some of the people you don't anticipate are the ones that end up winning? So nevertheless, I appreciate you guys for checking this out. Let me know what would be shocking to you as far as wins and losses at UFC 300. And where do you think they're going to go after that? Nevertheless, I appreciate you guys for joining me for another episode of Matter of Fact MMA. And I check you next time. Peace.